loved ones, imagine what would the cure for greed be? Would it not make sense that if everyone was afforded abundance, there is no desire to have extra? How can you have extra when you already have the extra? You want double extra. Well, what if the abundance included double extra as well? How far do you really want to take that? See, it becomes a very circular, unlogical desire to want more than you already have when you have more. It just doesn't make sense after a while. Problem is here is that we've been trained and we've been convinced and we've been taught and we've been shown how to trade our labor, our life energy for money. That is such an That is such an unbalanced equation. You cannot trade your life for $19 an hour. You cannot trade your life for $190 an hour. You literally cannot trade your life for $1,900 an hour. Do you see where we're going with this? Money is, and really the love of money to, you know, to either do great things or not so great things or even bad things. This becomes the problem. If we all had abundance and we could remove money, where does the greed come in? See how it has a tough time even entering the game now? And why? Because all of our attitudes around it have changed. We're here to support each other rather than take from each other. I was a greedy child when I was younger. I used to steal all the time. I'd walk into a store and I'd steal 10 CDs with the clerk standing right beside me. This was all fun and incredible that I had the balls to do such things. But here's where the story changes. When I left the store, what did I do with the CDs? I gave them away to all my friends. I didn't keep any. Is stealing from a corporation who steals from you, is that just not settling a dispute or a conflict? If you stole from me and I took it back, where are we now? We're at peace, are we not? So it's almost like inherently when I'm 9 years old and I realize that somehow or other, I don't understand this at the time, but I can feel that corporations are here to steal from us. So I'm here to start settling the score already. And then and oddly enough, I never got caught. The odd time I would get in trouble for something, mom and dad would punish me for it. I knew that the punishment was acceptable. And here's the odd twist. Would it deter me from doing it again? No. All it would do is strengthen my resolve this time to do it better and cleaner to make sure I didn't get caught. And it got me to a level where I was able to negotiate and manipulate adults and create situations and put myself into predicaments just to see if I could get out of them. Again, this seems to all have been training for where we are nowadays. Now, I'm not saying I'm stealing from people today, but what I am going to say is I'm stealing from our old friend Satan. I'm going to steal his army. I'm going to give all those that worship money, lust, greed, gluttony, all of those things, let's give them something better to desire. Let's give them something that actually gives them something in return. See how things get balanced? When we all start working together, when we all start using treasury instead of these charter banks on the sidelines that we actually don't have any practical use for these banks, they can all be eliminated from the equation right now and everything would actually stay the same. It would actually get better. We all have accounts at Treasury. Why did we have to open a secondary one at a franchise or a franchisee bank account? Like, it's such an extracurricular activity that is only there designed to administrate in our absence and fleece our accounts. So again, there is so much possibility right before us, right at this very moment in time, for us to finally step forward and do all this nonsense, right, that we've been talking about for 20 years, but really at the end of the day, is it nonsense? No, it's going to cure, I'm going to suggest, 98% of the Earth's problems right out of the gate. When we talk about that kind of an influx of change, when we talk about that type of a polarity swap, where does the greed now exist? We actually have teams of people that go out to solve greediness. Why is it that you need 135 cars? If you're that passionate about cars and you have a purpose for this, fine. I'm not saying that you can't have 139 cars. But for those that don't need 139 cars, concentrate on what it is you do need. Focus on that. Your abundance is right at your fingertips, as well as mine. And when we start working together, greed will not exist amongst our environment at all. We will not have to trade our labor for, again, $19 an hour. This is one of Satan's greatest tricks, is for us to trade our life, exchange our life for the ability to live that life. How ridiculous is that? But again, this is how smooth and this is how gullible and when we as people were taken advantage of, because we are caring, we are trusting, we are vulnerable to influence, to charm, to love. And lots of times this was used against us by nefarious dark people who were greedy because they never figured out how to tap their life estates. They had to do it the hard way to earn all their bazillions. They had the bazillions in the first place. They didn't have to turn into these complete assholes to take advantage of everybody else on the planet, animals included, trees, fish, everything. So once this system gets rebooted, once this system's funding comes from a different source, why do you think they call it human resources? Resource is not source. That's source repurposed. So if source is repurposed, it's not source anymore.
Look, you can even say the word.
It's literally now you're being consumed. Humans being consumed. They have human resources programs in every major business, well, even secondary and small businesses. Human resources departments everywhere for all kinds of these little silly applications. And as a matter of fact, I have a recording of, here's a funny story, I'll just throw this one in here. I had a situation where the girlfriend at the time comes home and says, oh, my colleague at work was called in by the human resources manager, director, and she came out of the office and she was bawling. So she comes out and she tells my partner at the time what the story was. Partner comes home and tells me this story at the dinner table. I don't say a word. Along the short of the story here is, though, that this woman was embarrassed. She was made to feel very insignificant. This human resources director, he was a foul individual, and he, let's just say, treated her very unkindly, very without class and dignity and things of this nature. So the next day, I call this business and I leave a 3-minute voice message for the human resources director. This message was suggesting, for the purposes of this conversation, you may refer to me as such and such. And further, it has come to our attention that you, such and such, called in this woman into your office for the purposes of this. And this was the result. And that how we find this very undignified. And we find this very unacceptable. This is something that you can fix yourself. However, given the significance of this situation, we understand if you absolutely need to take this matter to your superiors, because by day's end tomorrow, if there's not a formal apology issued to this woman, we're going to have to pursue other matters because damages now can be measured. So, I actually have this recording. I can dig it out. It's pretty funny. Point being, this woman gets called into the office again the next morning. And she comes out looking like she had seen a ghost. She comes out saying, someone called and left a message, and they wanted to know why I went and talked to my lawyer. And she's standing in the office saying, I didn't go to any lawyer. And they're like, yeah, you did. And then they played this message for her. And to this day, she has no idea who I am. So you can imagine, the surprise of someone being put into this situation where they are taken advantage of, but at the end of the day, they're good. They have honest intentions. They don't want to hurt people. Why is it fair that a good, honest individual gets taken advantage of and beaten up and hurt all the time? Who is actually going to stand up and start stopping this behavior from these bad people, these assholes? Who's going to actually do something about it? Turns out, about 10 days later, this human resources manager is fired from his position. And to the end of that story, this business that I called and left the voice message on, it happened to be the largest law firm in Canada. So what I'm saying is, how does this tie into abundance? Well, when we realize we have the abundance, we're going to start sharing it with others. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about your time. I'm talking about your spirit. Start sharing that. Start sharing your connection. And pretty soon you'll be very interestingly surprised at how everything just starts to work for you in a much better fashion. Somehow, if money was something we were concerned about a moment ago, as soon as you start acting charitably, and as soon as you start acting with Christ consciousness, and as soon as you stop acting selfishly, as soon as you let go of the greed, guess what happens by default? The abundance somehow starts to come. You got to give it a chance, though. You can't just give it 3 minutes and say, "Oh no, no rainbow showed up in my backyard, so that must be bullshit." Whatever Darren's talking about, that's just more a woo-hoo. No. You got to actually give this some sincerity. You actually have to put some real energy into this and not expect an outcome within a certain time frame. That's not how this works. Take the time frame out of your mind, out of your heart. Your only job is to cut wood and stack it. Your only job is to dig ditches and plant flowers. Your only job is to tend the garden. Your only job is to care about other people, animals, the planet. Service that first. Watch how the abundance comes. This is an energetic thing. And those who are controlling the energies see what it is that we're laying down, or what it is that, or what we're inputting, or what we're investing. As soon as we start investing wisely, don't our returns usually come quicker and more abundantly? If you're a shitty investor, what the hell do you think you're going to get in return? Come on now. It doesn't work like that. But change that dollar bill into a love signal that you can go spend. You can actually go exchange your love signals with anybody else's love signals, and actually both parties now will actually benefit, correct?
The most important thing you have to invest is your energy.
Exactly. Your time, your energy.
Invest wisely.
So when we're considering that money is, the root of all evil, yeah, I'm going to suggest that that is a very large component of the evil and where the roots are. I'm going to suggest there's other roots to evil. There has to be. Again, it's the use of money. It's the value of money. It's what you think money is. So there's a whole bunch of confusion around this particular verse, scripture, this piece of legislation. There's so much banking laws that are out there that are to convince us that, hey, worship money, worship that idol. Seek another's wealth rather than your own. That's right out of scripture. Whose wealth should we be seeking other than you wasting your life 9 to 5 every day? Yeah, I know you might love your job, and I know you might be contributing at some incredible level. Here's the other thing. If you had the abundance, here's the other question that people are, okay, yeah, but if everyone just stops working, nothing will get done. Bullshit. It's going to reset the system and give everybody the opportunity to go do what they love to do. And when you love to do something, you would literally do it for free. Not only would you do it for free, for example, when I worked in the movie industry, I actually liked it so much, I would have paid them per hour to go do that all day. It was that much fun. I loved it that much. So do not equate the two. Your time, your energy output, your investment, your capital, whatever it is that you have at your disposal, start using it, because we all have the same thing. It's called dominion. Once we restore that, we are in such better shape to now spread abundance to everybody else. Yes, we know money is a whole bunch of problems. How can we have the wealth of everything that we have looking around, and yet everyone's broke? Countries are broke. Corporations are, everyone's lacking, as Big Kahuna is suggesting here. Yes, when we suffer lack, that causes want. That leads to greed. Problem is that we're seeking for the wrong things in the wrong places. If we've discovered a treasure, would we be found wanting when you now have everything? I'm going to guarantee it that 9.8% of people out of 10 will lose their greed overnight. They become different people. This is what sparks the charity. This is why it's critical that some of us within Dïevergent here, and others, again, I'm not limiting this to our group. If some other group out there somehow walks through all the stuff that we're talking about and they cash out, they redeem their certificate, they're granted access to their treasury accounts, I'll be doing nothing but backflips and full of joy for that group. Because you want to know why? At some point in time, Dean and I helped spark that group to exist anyway. So you can see why I have no greed or ill will to any of these other groups, or I don't have to keep my ego inflated by telling these groups that, no, you're doing it wrong, that's not right, that'll never get you the remedy you're after. No, keep trying, keep putting the effort out there, because at some point, some of us, one of us, a group of us are going to get this done. And I firmly know that for them to have gotten that far, then their hearts and their minds are in the right place. And I can trust that. And I know that they're going to do exactly similar things to what I'm talking about. I don't care who gets the miracles going first, as long as someone does. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that that starts happening ASAP. Yes, I'm here to cure the greed. We're here to cure poverty, this, that, and the other. Again, that's a very long list. And this is what our strategic think tank starts developing. Tactical approaches to actually solving some of these problems, actually remedying some of these situations. What do we do if we tap our treasury accounts tomorrow? Well, we're working on that. We have a whole plan in place where we can actually start to execute immediately. We're not running around like a bunch of chickens with no heads trying to figure out what the hell to do. No, we're actually trying to organize. And again, I don't even like that word, organize. It's got too much biological feeling to it. There's something weird about it. I don't know. It's kind of like, if you want to be an organ donor, make sure you sign this driver's license. So does that mean they can pull you over and take your organs? Because that driver's license doesn't suggest in the event of an accident they can now harvest your organs. It's kind of weird. I don't know why I stuck that one in there. But point is, loved ones, yes, we're getting to the bottom of the greed. No one has come forward with an abundance package and spread it to the loved ones to see what would happen as an experiment. That hasn't happened. The closest we've come to peace and prosperity is the last Renaissance period. And guess what? That's where the artists took over. That's where the lawyers got pushed into the back row because no one gave a shit about what the lawyers said no more. Isn't it ironic that 96% of politicians are former lawyers? Can we start doing the headwork here, please? How come? Right after the French Civil Revolution, what did they do first? They killed all the lawyers. Why? Why does the Bible say, woe unto ye lawyers? And it says it a number of times. If you want to know what that word woe means, it's not good.
Not good.
Not good. So when we start taking over here, the corporations are what forces us to live these lives full of greed and imbalance and literally impoverish ourselves spiritually. These ruthless people that control these corporations are going to be removed from the equation. The powers that were are no longer. There's new management in town. Scripture talks about this. Somebody shows up and takes over. And he's not acting in person. And she's not an agent of the government. And both of these people are not for-profit entities. As soon as you hold that social insurance number, that social security number, you've made a pledge. You've promised that you are going to hold a legal interest or a legal status for the purposes of profit. That's why they can tax you. It's called income. I'm not so much worried about income for me personally anymore. I'm more worried about outcome. I actually don't live on income anymore. I've somehow manifested or alchemized it so that I literally can survive on outcome. Based on what I'm investing in, I suppose. Something's working in the background here. And for all of you listening to this and others to come, there's a reason we were sparked into drive from neutral, having figured out reverse. Moving forward, loved ones. Peace.
Hey, Tobias. I completely agree with your statement there, buddy. That's why it's on my mission statement to remove corporations from this planet altogether. Parties to a trust, all done in equity, will completely eradicate corporations as we know it. Believe it or not, there are situations where the all caps name can gift, transfer, or sell something to the living. Perhaps the all caps fiction name wanted to grant a certain right to the living, all within the same name. Again, it's similar, but it's not the same, right? One style slightly different. All these things are possible, and we will talk about those in future episodes, loved ones. Stay tuned.
Good question, Jessica. Here's the deal with if someone expresses an interest in the property that you are currently renting, even though we think we own it. So this is why priority becomes very important. Priority is established when you get your interests registered or recorded first. But technically, you're right. Let's say that you're just sitting there as a renter, and I didn't like you very much. I could literally roll in and express an equitable interest in your home and get you booted right out. So that is something that we should all be thinking about. Again, that is part of the plan here. This is part of the system where we will secure and protect our assets. That's what that trust is for, and that's why registering or recording that trust is paramount. That way it actually acts as a firewall so that nobody can express any type of interest in any type of property protected by your trust. Even a police officer pulling you over for speeding. Oh, no, that driver's license is in the trust. You can't attach a ticket to it. Again, that's not a green light to go speeding and flying through stop signs, but anyway, you get the drift. Hey, Big Kahuna, yeah, good question about the low water marks on the east and west coasts. And notice when it says the land shall be considered as water. Keyword in there being considered. That means something has transferred, something has moved, something is not what it appears to be, something is no longer what it was before. So what event would cause that consideration to happen, right? This is where all of us being deemed public citizens and being under the guise or under the rules subject to the at-law system, the common law system, all being governed by the Admiralty rules on the water. We are all subject to the code of shipping. Thus, everything is water. Literally what they're saying there is no land. The entire globe is now considered as water, which is why it's critical here that we get our shit together and get that stuff fixed up. But yeah, Big Kahuna, good question, buddy. And yeah, Jessica, who are the people overseeing our trust, to finish answering your question from earlier? Essentially, the trustees, who are accountable to the courts, do all the overseeing. We as the settlors and the beneficiaries, the settlor, we're going to get into that. The settlor is the one who just puts the trust together. The settlor is technically not entitled to any beneficial interest in the trust, but they are the man or the woman who actually puts this thing together, acting in one capacity, right? You got one cowboy hat on, and then you literally go, you take that cowboy hat off, you put on a different one, and then you show up as the beneficiary. So that person, that individual, could be either the same man or woman, or you can grant that interest to, say, me, if you wanted to, or your children, or a loved one, a neighbor, another family member, etc., etc. But the Attorney General's office oversees the trustees, makes sure that all these lawyers, that's technically who's going to be administrating and looking after everything for us in the background. So all these lawyers are now answerable to the Attorney General, who is now answerable to the judges, who is essentially answerable to the Governor General, who's actually answerable to the Queen herself. So that's kind of the chain of command as to how all this works. Now, once every 6 months or once a year, all the accountings must be brought before the court to make sure everything's going properly, all tickety-boo. And if there's any problems, discrepancies, conflicts, etc., 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 the judges and the judiciary will make sure that everything is running smooth. That way the beneficiary doesn't have to be jumping back and forth between the settlor position and the beneficial interest holder to be managing all this stuff and making sure that everything is running smoothly. That's not our job. As a matter of fact, I'll post a little blurb here in a bit about that suggests once the protected purchaser has parted with consideration, he or she is not obligated to see to the application of everything we're doing. What that means in crayon version is, once we do this, we're no longer concerned to make sure that it's operating properly. We got more important things to do. That's the job of the trustees. And they're really good at it. They're way better than I am. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Mike V. Yeah, buddy. The Attorney General's office is pretty friggin' high up the food chain when it comes to being the protector of these trusts. Now, considering they only really technically get involved in charitable trusts, but when we set this up properly, there is a lot of charity going on here in the background. For example, a couple loved ones and myself, we started monkeying with birth certificate applications a couple of years ago when we were just testing things, and we immediately got response back from the Department of Justice regarding our birth certificate application. And who heads up the Department of Justice? It's the Attorney General. So again, for the Department of Justice to be responding to particulars that we were inquiring about, that tells us, who's sitting on the chair or who's taken up the seat of authority when it comes to protecting this stuff. And again, the Attorney General's office does this in conjunction with the judiciary or, the judges. This is all set up in the background for us. Again, they're all just waiting for us to come forward and supply or furnish or provide enough particulars, enough expresses or enough expressions of a trust so that they can act accordingly. Very important. And again, I've reiterated this a number of times, but possession of that certificate and how it intertwines with what we're doing here is very, very important. We actually do not want to be in possession of that security for the time being. We must flip it, or we must add value, we must endorse it, we must do a bunch of things to it first, then send it off. They will now return it. Sometimes they'll send it with the consideration back. Most times they don't. They will send the coin back and they will keep the certificate. And then they'll issue something different. Now, if you ask me what's going on in the background is they're canceling it without us asking them to do it, and they're reissuing a certificate based on new, updated terms and conditions. Again, this is where the Express Trust comes in. Hey, Pamela, fantastic story thus far. Would love to have you expand on that a little bit more. Incredible stuff. Appreciate the effort and the determination, absolutely. In terms of the respondent, yeah, it kind of sort of depends on what we're trying to do at the moment. If we're trying to express a trust, if you're trying to name trustees, if you're trying to make certain adverse claims, this, that, and the other. There's actual several possibilities and options in terms of the respondent. Again, it could be just the state versus, you versus the state, you versus we the people, you versus the Attorney General. Again, there's a number of criteria that we can kind of sift through and determine exactly what it is that you were trying to do. Without me seeing the context of your paperwork, it's a little bit vague, right? Like it's a little bit, I can't really nail down an answer for you there yet, but that's going to be coming here pretty soon, I'm thinking. Thanks, Pamela.